You just have to be very smooth and just anticipate that. The apex, you want to use a little bit of the curb, especially the the lower part of that curb. The lower part is fine. The higher part of the curb, where you can see there is a bit more angle, might upset the car, but you can try it and see how it reacts. It's a tricky turn. It's a turn where it's very easy to do mistakes, just because the fact that it's off camber amplifies every little imperfection you might have with the driving, or every little mistake you will make. But overall, yeah, just anticipate everything, turn in a bit early, and on the exit you can track out all the way to the left-hand side. There is a curve that you can use, but you have to be careful with the exit curves in Sonoma because they are pretty dusty. But you want to use all the road on exits. So you need a good run. There is a bit of a straight line leading to turn 3, so you need a good run out of the turn. And also being early on power exiting turn 2 will allow you to settle the rear of the car down. It's going to put the weight to the rear of the car and give you some extra rear grip. So using the throttle to control the rear in that turn can be helpful. So we're now in turn 3. Turn 3 is very tricky because of the changes in the elevation of the track. As you can see, it goes downhill, but then you hit a big compression. So it's going to give you a bit of a strange feeling getting into the turn, because you're going to go over that little crest and start going downhill, and the car is going to feel very light and numb in a way. You're going to feel like your steering wheel is very light, and the important thing when the car starts feeling numb is to stay very calm and very smooth, because what you can tend to do is the car feels numb, it's doing nothing, I'm going to start being aggressive with my hands to try and get it to react. But the result in doing that is that couple feet later you're going to hit a big compression. So let's say you put a little too much steering wheel angle when the car was feeling light over the first crest. Once you hit the compression, it's going to react 10 times more than it would in a normal situation. So you want to anticipate that and actually wait until you hit the compression to really work the car and use the steering wheel, to turn the car. You really want to wait for the car to settle into that compression to be aggressive and really hustle the car into the turn. The apex curb is not good. You don't want to touch it there. It's pretty big, and it will usually upset the car, which will put you in a bad position for turn 3A, which is a right-hander. So remember, you have to exit that turn on the left. You got to stay on the left to prepare the next right-hander. So really not good to use the curb because it's going to put you offline. Preparing turn 3A, you have a bit of a similarity to turn 2. This corner is off camber, so you want to anticipate a little bit of a drift from the car, which means you have to turn in a bit earlier than you're going to believe at first, just because the car is going to drift, and if you turn in at your, I'd say, instinctive turning point, your first guess, you're going to miss the apex just because of that drift. So you have to anticipate the drift. You can use some of the curb, very similar to turn 2. The lower part of the curb, which is a bit flatter, is going to be okay. The higher part of the curb might upset the car. I have to say though, in a Spec Miata or an MX-5, which is a bit softer than an open wheel, it's going to be easier. The car is going to be easier to drive over the curb, so just try it, see how the car reacts. As you can see at the apex, the exit is blind. It's very easy to get off track on the exit of this turn. You want to actually be almost by the middle of the track before you kind of get over that crest, because what's going to happen, added to the fact that you cannot see the exit, the crest is going to make your car drift even more, because all of a sudden the corner goes downhill, as you can see here. And it's going to make the car drift more, even more than it does at the apex or in turn 2. So you really want to anticipate that. And yes, you want to be early on power as well, because as we were mentioning, it being off camber will upset the rear of the car, and being on the power will allow you to settle the rear down and control it better. So early on power, you can use some of the exit curb, but Sonoma, always be careful. The curbs can get sandy, dusty because of the wind. So you can use some of it, but maybe not the entirety of the curb. So I'm going to hand it over to Joel. If you have some questions, you can tag them in, and while Joel is explaining turn 4 and 5, I will be able to answer them.
Thank you, Tristan. As you guys saw, I've been answering a few of the questions about turns 1 and 3. Tristan, if you wanted to comment on turn 3, that'd be great. But moving ahead into turn 4, where we left off, Tristan hit a very good point about the dust. The top of 3A is very, very, almost, you can count on it. Somebody's going to hang the left side tires off of that curb and drag every bit of dust all the way into the brake zone and into the entry of turn 4 as we begin to look at that. And that will cause a few things. You'll lose braking capability, you'll lose turning capability, and that dust, as fine as it is, never really goes away. So you guys just have to be remembering, if you see that there, that's going to be the case. It may not be such of a handling issue, but the good thing is it's the same for everyone, so you guys got to make the best of it. Entering the corner also, the brake markers on the left, you might say, I'm braking at the 200 board or the 100 board. Any of those cars that go off usually knock over those boards. So try not to keep your brake referencing those boards, because at some point over the weekend, they're going to disappear, I think. I can probably assure you that. So the end of the exit curbing, which you see right now, is a very good braking reference. For us in the open wheel cars, it's just past that. So for you guys, you'll have to adjust accordingly for Spec Pinata or possibly HPDE cars. Some notes on the entry. It is all downhill braking. So in turn 1, how we talked about is uphill, which will catch the car, even though you're flat out, you're not braking. This is the exact opposite. The hill is going to want to push you down, not going to allow you to stop very good, and you might have that dust there. As well as this corner doesn't really lead onto the longest straightaway, but it does lead onto a potential passing opportunity. So it's strictly a momentum corner. You need to not try to brake really, really late, because if you have a car that doesn't have ABS, then it's very easy to lock a right front tire. If you do, it's very easy to miss the apex, then you're late to power, and the guy behind you will most likely pass you into 6. So with that in mind, my advice is to do a little bit longer and a little bit lighter of a brake for turn 4. What this will do is it will help keep the weight on the nose at turn-in, because this is a natural corner of understeer. The car will want to push, especially mid-off. So keeping that little bit of extra weight may help the car rotate a little bit better right at the center, which is something you're going to look for in your chassis setup. This corner is notorious for understeer, and even if you try to take the understeer out, when you get over to corners such as the S's or turn 10, or even turn 2, you're going to have oversteer. So which corners do you want? So this is a corner where you can tailor your driving style to help reduce that understeer by having maybe a little bit lighter brake pressure, but for a little bit longer period of time, all the way down to the apex to help with that rotation. So we'll move the slides now and go through those corners, or through turn 4, as we look at the exit. So here's the entry to turn 4. As I said, the end of this curb is a very good reference for braking. The open wheel cars were braking just past this. So we'll move now to the exit of turn 4. So going through it, I didn't touch too much on the curb there, but it's one that if you use, you just want to nip it. It's got a pretty big, let's call it, bulge to it that'll make the car jump or skip. And that will, again, induce that understeer that you don't want. So if you tag it a little bit with the rear, that may help the rotation. It's kind of a quick fix in a race if you're fighting some of that understeer, but not too much curb use on turn 4. On the exit, use all of the exit curbing. But remember the dust that Tristan talked about, because that'll want to continue moving the car off the track. So the curbing on the left of 4, you're going to use all of it, but bring it back on the way into turn 5. So turn 5 really isn't a corner, in my opinion. It's more of a kink leading up to turn 6. It is flat out pretty much in any car that you drive. but when you go through it, you're just going to want to hook the road. You're going to want to stay to driver's right into 6. And why do you want to do that? It's to help set it up. If you track too far out, there's not enough run between turn 5 and the entry to 6 to get the car back to the right, which you see here. So we'll turn it over to Tristan to talk about turn 6. And if you have any questions, I'll get to those now.
Thanks, Joel. By the way, there was a question about turn 3. I think I clicked the wrong icon. The question disappeared, but yes, you want to set up an open wheel car to bottom in the compression of turn 3. So can get started with turn 6 now. So another crest, actually, and a downhill entry turn. You're gonna go downhill as you hit the brakes. That's another part of the track where the rear of the car is going to feel light just because you're going downhill. So you want to be careful not to over brake, because as you know, when you brake, it tends to get the rear of the car to feel light. It transfers the weight to the front and gets the car to oversteer more easily. So entering this turn, you want to be very careful with that. Even though you want to brake enough to slow the car down efficiently, you want to be smooth with your brake application, because you want to keep the rear of the car low to get good rear grip on entry. It's a fast turn. It's going downhill. You want good rear grip on entry. The entry, again, as it's going downhill, you're going to have a bit of a drift, so you want to anticipate the turn-in a little bit as well in this turn. But as soon as you get closer to the apex, you will get a bit more of a compression. Sorry, I scrolled a little too fast here. You will get into a bit of a compression, and the car will pick up more grip. So very smooth hands on entry as well. It's a tricky entry to that turn. There's not much grip, so smooth with the brake pedals, smooth with your hands. It's going to be a slow turn in, and this turn is a carousel. It's very long, so you want to get down to the apex slowly. You don't want to find yourself handcuffed at the apex too early in the turn, because it means you're not going to exit well, and the exit there is very important, because after the carousel is the biggest passing spot on this track, the straight line that leads to turn 7. So important to have a good exit. So as soon as you're at the apex and you feel the car is rotated, you can get back to maintenance power. That will also help you to settle the rear of the car down. Early on maintenance power, and track out all the way to the right hand side of the track. You can use whole of the curb, but again, be careful, because the track is going to be a bit dusty and sandy. It's going to have less grip than the actual track surface. So when you hit it, you're going to lose some grip. So when you touch the curb, you don't want to have too much G-load on the car, because you're going to lose that grip and then end up in the dust. So careful with the exit curve, but you can use it, certainly. On the way up to turn 7, obviously biggest passing zone on the track, so important to get a good run out of turn 6. Also important to be very good under braking, because being able to brake late is going to allow you to pass cars or to not get passed. You can use some of the brake markers to your left for reference. No, there is no rule regarding where to brake. You got to choose your brake marker. You got to start maybe at the marker at the 5th marker, and then slowly take it deeper into the turn 4, 3.5, but really lap after lap build it up, and that's the best way. You're going to get faster and faster throughout the weekend. But once you found a comfortable place to brake, use that marker as a reference, but always challenge yourself to try and brake a little deeper, because it will really help you when come race time. So the lap time here is going to come from braking late and being able to rotate the car quickly to get a good exit. This turn is going to lead down to the S's, which might be flat if you get it right, if you get them right. So it's important to be early on power, because there's a long run to the last turn from here through the S's to the last run. So you want a good exit. So late hard braking, rotate the car efficiently. If you're suffering from understeer, you can use some brake pressure at the middle of the turn to put some load to the front of the car and get more front grip. To help yourself To achieve that, you can try to brake even deeper and carry the brakes later into the turn, which means your minimum speed will be reached later into the turn as well, but which means that your foot will be on the brakes longer through the turn. And when your foot is on the brakes, you have load on the front wheels because you're transferring load to the front of the car. And when you have load on the front wheels, you have more steering power, which allows you to rotate the car really well. So this is going to help you, especially if you're suffering from understeer. One thing on the exit, be very careful because it's very slippery. For some reason, this corner has very bad traction. It's low grip, so you want to be very careful with your throttle application. It's better to be smooth and get to full power a bit later than you might want than trying to go to power, then have to get out of it, then go back, then get out of it again. You'll get a much better run out of this turn by being smooth on the throttle, and also use all the track on the exit. Obviously, you don't want to set yourself offline because the exit of this turn prepares yourself for the S's, but make sure you open up your hands as much as you can because it's going to allow you to put the power down. So I think that's about it. I'll leave it to Joe for the S's and go answer your guys' questions.
Well, Tristan, may I interject with one question that I just got emailed?
Sure.
The question is, pertains to shaving off the most time during a relatively tight yet also gradual turn like 7A in Sonoma. So with his vehicle, it's relatively weak kick under 2300 RPM and first gear going as high as 35 miles per hour. These turns give me the most difficulty. It's either one downshift to first just before the turn to keep good power during the turn and suffer an upshift at the exit, or keep it in second, lose some vigor during the turn, but have a smooth exit. Which, in your opinion, would be the best way to go about this?
It's always tricky. We actually suffer it sometimes even in any open wheel or prototype you drive, because having to downshift to first gear is going to create some engine brake, which eventually might allow you to brake later, but is going to affect your minimum speed in the corner. And also having to upshift at the exit of a turn is the penalty, especially if you start from a lower minimum speed, because the first gear slowed you down even more. Now the second gear might get the RPM a little low and not give you as good power on exit. I would suggest to really try to use the second gear to your advantage by rolling a lot more minimum speed into the turn that you would if you were using first gear. You might want in second gear, because you're going to have less engine brake, you might want to brake a little earlier because you're not going to be able to slow the car down as much, since you cannot use the gearbox to help yourself as much. And brake a little earlier, but roll off the brakes earlier than you would in first gear, and get on power early and try to really use the momentum in the middle of the turn to create lap time. In first gear, you want to try to brake as late as you can. Make the downshift as late as you can in the turn, because it will slow the car down less if you do it as close to the apex as you can. You won't suffer as much from the engine braking, really, like slowing you down. And get back very early on power in the first gear. I will try these two techniques regarding the two approaches. Maybe do each of them for 3 laps throughout a run, and then go back, look at data, and make sectors. Even if you don't have data, if you have a GoPro, you can look at the GoPro, find a reference on the track, and use a clock to try and see which technique was the fastest, and then make your decision based on that. The quality of the tires also is going to enter into play, because if you're on new tires, maybe then you're able to carry second gear through the turn and have a lot of minimum speed, which means you will get a good exit despite having low RPM, because you carry more speed through the apex. So you have to consider all of these things. I would suggest trying both and then making a decision.
Okay. All right, let's move on. Thank you, Tristan, for turn 7 and 7A, we're going to move into the full S's complex. So it's not just one corner, it's not two corners put together. It's literally a straightaway with some twisty bits in the middle that leads to probably the #1 passing zone around the whole track. And if anybody hasn't been to Sonoma yet, it's between either turns 11 or 7. Those really are your two main passing zones. So exiting 7A is one of the most important corners on the track to get the power down because it leads into a passing zone. So the first corner that you see on your screen is going into turn 8. No matter what you're in, it will be flat out at this point. It's pretty easy. But as we get through the S's, turn 10 is going to be the tricky part. So the next slide you guys are going to see, which should be just before the crest and going around turn 9, is probably the first of the tic-tac-toe aspects of this. So right now, as you see, you're going to have to go into the left, then the right, and then the left again. On that third left, before you guys reach, it's really 8A, you're going to want to stay to the left as much as you possibly can, because at 8A, the corner is not alone off camber, but there's another crest right in the middle of it, similar to turns 2 and similar to entry of 6, which is going to want to throw the car to your left. So you're going to have to set up for that. And the next question may be, is 8 and 8A flat out? So if we go to, if you look at those, some cars they are and some cars not. If you're going to have to do a lift for that complex, do it early rather than later, because as I mentioned, this leads into a passing opportunity and you want to be the first to power. So very smooth with the hand input the whole way through the S's. In terms of your setup, this is where you're going to be looking a lot at your dampers. Dampers work when the car is moving. When the car is static under constant load, dampers don't do as much. So the rolling from the left to right to left, you'll be wanting to work with those as you go through the S's. But remember, what your feet do to the attitude of the car will really impact these S's. If they're jerky, they're going to increase the feeling that you're getting, whether it's an oversteer or an understeer. So you can fix a lot what's going on in the car in the S's simply with your feet and smoothing that process out. You're going to be pulling gears all the way through these S's. And when you're going to be in top gear when you reach turn 9, which we'll talk about in a minute. I want to talk a little bit about if it rains, because it's very possible that it can rain in Sonoma here at the end of the year. The S's in the rain get quite treacherous. You hear of a rain line and stuff like that. Not really something you're going to look at, except in maybe 8A. You might be able to offset the normal line just a little bit, but it's not so much a rim shot for 8A because you're going to run on a road on exit. So it's literally tiptoeing through the exit in the rain, short spurts of being on power, go around the corner, another short spurt. The curbing being painted is extremely slippery, so be careful of those to not get on them in the rain. Going all the way, unfortunately, the video that we have here was on the IndyCar circuit, so it doesn't show turn 9, which is a long left-hander that goes around where the IndyCar chicane would be if you guys were there a few weeks ago, or know it's from seeing it on television. That turn 9 left-hander should be easy flat in whatever car you are in. Before we lead into turn 10, which will be when you run the long circuit, or what the NASCARs use, becomes quite treacherous because it's extremely fast. You'll be entering turn 10 at the tip top of whatever gear is in your car. So entering it, you may have to do a speed adjustment if your car is aero balanced, like an open wheel car, or maybe some of the sports cars that have a big splitter or some aero pieces to it that help the balance. You will have to lift. I do not believe you're going to have to downshift. Apologize because I haven't drove, especially on this particular track. But braking earlier or lifting earlier is much, much better than trying to do it right in the middle of 10, especially because of the amount of speed that you're carrying in there. Any speed adjustment that you do is going to cause an oversteer because that weight transfer is going to go to the front right when you're trying to turn. My advice is do everything, a lift, even if you have to brake while you're going straight. And right before you turn in, that is when you're going to want to go back to power. You're going to use as much curbing on the left, the apex, and the exit that is needed. The exit is another one of those where cars will start going off the track because they'll literally just slide on that fine dust and a rut will start to develop. So be careful there, because if you go off on, let's say, Thursday or Friday, that rut might not be too big. You go off on Sunday, now you got about a half a foot drop off and you're going to bottom the car out. So turn 10 is extremely fast. It's a consistent loaded corner. So as we talked about before, the S's are very big on dampers. Turn 10 is going to be a little bit more on spring and sway bar. So if there's an issue in that particular corner, look towards more of maybe a sway bar or a spring change. I'd probably start with sway bars for going through turn 10. And then that'll lead you up to 11, which I'll turn back over to Tristan.
Thank you, Joe. Great explanation. So turn 11, one of the few corners here on this track, which is actually a flat, not flat out, but flat, no elevation change, no off-camber. It's a long turn, very long turn, very important turn because it's a passing zone as well, and it leads to the front straight line, so you want a good run out of this turn. The main thing in these kind of turns, especially in a Spec Miata or MX-5, where you might suffer a bit from understeer when you want to get back to power, you want to be patient. You're going to have to brake late, obviously, and carry the brakes late into the turn, but you want to be patient going to power. If you try to go to power too early, you're going to understeer and have to get out of it, and then your run out of the turn is bad. So the best way to achieve that, to have a good exit, is actually to brake pretty late and have good entry speed. Why? Because if you brake late and carry the brakes late into the turn, it's going to put your minimum speed later in the corner. It's going to, getting through the turn with your foot on the brakes is going to transfer weight to the front, give you load on the front wheels, and more steering power. So it's going to allow you to steer the car through the turn better with less understeer, and put yourself in a better position for the exit, because you're going to be able to rotate the car and position it better for the exit of that turn. So brake late and carry the brakes through the turn to be able to rotate and position the car. And only when the car is rotated by the apex, or even sometimes a little after the apex, you want to get back to power. This turn is never going to end. It's low grip surface. Remember, it's Sonoma. There's very little grip there, so it's going to be important to be patient and smooth on power. Setup recommendations for this turn. It's a long turn. If you suffer from understeer on exit, you might want to try to stiffen up the rear of the car a little bit. For instance, the sway bar might help, because having the rear of the car more rigid will help you to transfer less weight to the rear when you actually want to get back to power. It will keep more load on the front wheels and give you more front grip at the time you want to accelerate. So that will be my suggestion, but remember, it's a long track, so you're going to have to compromise. Maybe having some understeer in this turn is going to be something you can get rid of, because if you set up the car to be fast in turn 11, then the car might be oversteery in all these corners that are off camber or that have a downhill entry like turn 6. So it's going to be about compromise. That's my advice for turn 11. Very important to get a good run out, because it's going to be a long run to turn 1. It's not the best passing zone of the track, since it's not a proper straight line, but still very important, especially in qualifying. If you want a good lap, you need good speed out of there. So that's also where pit entrance is going to be on your left. And yeah, that's it for the last turn.
Yeah, turn 12 is not a corner at all. But one thing I wanted to mention to everybody, kind of in general about the track, and Tristan, you could probably comment as well. You know, when people ask, is this a stiff style setup or is this a soft style setup? It's really none of both of them, because you need to be soft because the place is a low grip track, but if you go too soft, you'll lose the platform in the car, or the car will not be able to load the tire in, let's say, the carousel or in turns 10 like you would need it. So this track is a lot of compromise, and you can help to compromise yourself if you just be cognizant of your steering input and what your pedals are doing. We talked a lot about that in turn 4, how you could help that understeer. The same goes with in turn 10, and then Tristan commented on turn 11 to kind of give and take. You could help through the middle and power down, but you'll hurt other places. So my recollection of the place was a lot of it is you literally just have to get up and drive it, because the chassis is kind of in that neutral zone. You pick some corners that you want to be good at and tune the car for those, and the other ones you just got to figure it out yourself. And like I said, those inputs are what will help you.
Yes, exactly. It's one of those few tracks where you actually can see sometimes from year to year, some teams, even some great teams, cannot figure it out on certain years, because it's very mysterious, because it combines both a very low grip surface, but it's one of the tracks, I mean, this track and Mazda Raceway are the tracks here with the most elevation in US, and with all these compressions and off-camber turns and crests, you need to have good platform in your car. If your car is too soft, it's going to suffer from these changes too much. But if it's too stiff, you're going to struggle because it's a low grip surface. So it's a big compromise, and nobody really has an answer on what is the right setup. You can see some great teams coming to this track sometimes and struggle, and it also changes a lot depending on the wind direction. The wind can blow some sand on the track, so always be careful on this track when you're in the pits. When you are in the pits, look at this flag on the inside of the track, on the infield. There is an American flag. Always look at the wind direction, because it's going to affect your braking references or your on-throttle points, because if you're facing the wind, obviously you're going to get to the corner slower and you will be able to brake later. So always try to take advantage of this. And as Joel said, since the surface is such low grip, every little imperfection in your driving is a big penalty. So you have to be very smooth and very perfect with everything you do. I'm not sure what that was. So yeah, very perfect. Is there more questions? If you have more questions, guys, it's the right time to send them. Maybe general feel of the track or what we just talked about.
While you guys are typing in questions, I had to mute one of our other organizers. I apologize for that. And also, thank you again for bearing with us here in the beginning. I did put up the forums here. In the future, hopefully we'll start out a little bit better and spell ARC correctly for the SCCAs. Coming up, we also have posted an article Kenton Cook, one of our other Behind the Zoom contributors, wrote for us on MazdaMotorsports.com. We thought it was fitting to put this post up because of the technicalities of Sonoma having low grip, as of course you heard, and also a lot of camber changes, positive, negative, compressions, and how to adjust your driving style, since one setup, stiffer, softer, really is difficult to say. So hopefully that is helpful as well. Of course, we have the other resources written, track map, for instance, detailed information, turn-by-turn description on the Sonoma piece on the website as well. We did not include the data map. I've got a data map from an open wheel car. To be honest, we almost are always going to have more information on the the MX-5 or spec Miatas just based off who of our drivers have the most experience here, their experience was in different cars. So the data map was something a little bit harder to come by, but the future ones, such as Mazda Raceway, of course, we will have the data maps. But I can send you guys the data maps if anybody wants to mention that on the questions here. I can certainly send it. I'll also, of course, send the PowerPoint. The recording was stopped in the beginning, so you'll only get, probably 3/4 of it. I apologize for that, but we really appreciate you joining. Hopefully, this was helpful in your preparation. Hopefully, you'll be able to make adjustments during the weekend a little bit quicker, understanding the adjustments, of course, for driving as well as setup. But thank you guys very, very much again for all your support. We really, really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll keep doing a better job for you guys. So thank you. And thank you, Tristan. Thank you, Joel.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for attending. Thanks for hanging with us through the couple issues we had at the start. And yes, hope it was helpful, and hope we have you for more seminars.